Good evening, everybody. Mona again here in Singapore. It is already evening. We are 6:20, and we are almost at the end of our full day event. But we have a few sessions left, which are very interesting to join as well. So I hope you can. So our next session is a fireside chat with Chye Kit Chionh, who's going to moderate it. And this is all about managing risks through AI. Chye, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you, RegTech, for organizing this wonderful event and for having me on the event to speak with Ron. Now, a little bit about myself. First, I run a RegTech company called Cynopsis Solutions. So we focus primarily in the anti-money laundering, AML, KYC space, end to end, to make our clients' regulatory journey a lot better and a lot easier by using technology, including artificial intelligence. Now, as an aside, I chair the Singapore FinTech Association RegTech Subcommittee, which Mona is also part of the team. So we work quite closely together to try and help build the ecosystem and encourage adoption of RegTech technologies or solutions by the financial institutions or banks, and we have interaction with regulators, with tertiary institutions, just to promote the concept of RegTech. Now, today, or at least in the next 20 minutes or so, my job is actually to moderate a session and have a very, I think it will be a very interesting conversation with Ron to talk little bit about how do we use artificial intelligence to manage risk. And as we all know, banks and financial institutions is in the business of taking risk, and using artificial intelligence to manage risk it shouldn't be a new concept. That's what I would suggest now. And so I'll pass the session to Ron to do a little bit of an introduction about himself, as well as Windward, the company that he currently represents. Ron.
Great. Thanks, Chye Kit. So it's great to be here. I wish it was in person. The last time I was in Singapore was a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic. But I've been in this room ever since. So having to use my imagination to do this fireside chat. But anyway, so just a little bit of background. I'm a chartered shipbroker. I've been around for about 27 years in ships and ports and energy. I've always been a technology enthusiast, so I really enjoy opportunities like this to have this kind of conversation. I think my start in technology was even before I started my career. I went to university to do computing and informatics, as it was called then, kind of early precursor of AI. But I quickly realized that coding wasn't for me, so I switched to maritime business and marine law, and I've been in it ever since. So kind of fast forward into now, I joined Windward in July, so nearly 2 years, 2 years ago. And I'd known Ami and Matan, who were the co-founders of Windward, for a number of years, and I've been watching what Windward have been doing for years now. And I always knew they were going to do some cool things, and they've really delivered on it in the last few years. And then I got the opportunity to join, which was great. So my job now is I'm VP of Commercial. I'm based here in London, and I lead our energy and our supply chain business lines. So looking forward to my first non-flammable fireside chat.
Okay, cool. I think it's interesting because you come from the maritime side, which is actually in the financial services side, you'll be like considered like the bankers, right? The business side of the things, and I think Windward is doing some cool stuff around the compliance side of the maritime sector, if I can sort of say that. And so bringing and maritime sector will always have got something to do with the financial services sector, because it's very interrelated, trade finance, and as well as cargo financing and all these other stuff that needs to happen in order for the global economy and the global trade to continue to run. So in respect of risk management, right? Ron, in your view, do you think the state of play at the moment, is it where people are managing risk, right? Whether is it from a financial services perspective or from a maritime trade perspective, or the two of them being joined together or interrelated, do you think that are they using the right tool to manage the risk that they face today? And if they are not, what do you think they should be doing?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I know you'll know this, from Cynopsis. I know you'll know this inside out. But I think from my perspective,
For the benefit of the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my point of view, the whole area around KYC, know your customer, know your supplier, know your customer's customer, is pretty disjointed. I've looked at this for a number of years, and originally it was pretty straightforward stuff, right? You'd look and see, is this thing on a list or not, and it was pretty simple. You could do it on Excel. You didn't really need AI to do that. Although obviously having it helps a lot for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I think one of the things that we've looked at in the last few years is coining the term KYV, and the idea there was really around, FIs and banks don't bank ships, they bank entities typically. So we needed to try and find some way of bridging the gap between their day job, because we always think about that kind of Clayton Christensen approach to product management, jobs to be done, if you're familiar with that. I'm a big fan, and I like the idea of being immersed in customers' workflow, because I think you end up with better outcomes. It's not about what I think, it's about what problem they're trying to solve. And I think that you end up with better products and better use of technology. So I think it sort of comes on to particularly banks. They've got a big digitalization agenda. There's obviously different schools of thought on how to approach that. There's the traditional waterfall type mega projects that are expensive to run, and they may or may not deliver. And then I think the more innovative banks and FIs take a more labs approach. I've been on at least 2 webinars in the last couple of weeks where I heard some really interesting things about how energy businesses, for example, approach this labs approach. And I think it's great, because I think the idea of being able to deliver fast iterations, let's say, in an agile way, and actually see results rapidly is very attractive. Particularly if you've sold the project to the board and you want to be able to show progress, that we're in a state at some point, we've identified the issues, and then we've made the changes. And the opposite of that, I think, is these old waterfall projects. By the time they get released, they're usually hopelessly out of date, and not particularly popular, let's say, with the operators on the teams. So I think, I guess briefly, I suppose we've got to the stage now where these ongoing issues with these kind of waterfall projects would do things like throw up false positives, which just waste an enormous amount of time. And just for an average team, if you get it right, you can save, we've seen it in our own research, 270 days a year of working time by slamming things like false positives.
So yes, thanks for that. So which means that what you're basically saying at the moment, so far, is that of course there's going to be a lot of I would say potential or benefits that you can get out of automating certain processes. Whether it's the waterfall or agile approach of doing things. And as well as who has the ability to explore technologies like artificial intelligence, and within AI itself, I think that's been talked about quite a fair bit throughout the earlier part of this conference, that there are many verticals of artificial intelligence that currently exist, and for what it's worth, they work, and they have been proven to massively help in the process of banks or FIs trying to comply better with regulation. Maybe like you mentioned about false positive and all that, reducing of that stuff. But You know, there's also a fair bit of hype and misconception about AI. You know, almost to the extent, I like to say this term, of being able to solve world peace. Yeah, uh, at some point maybe it will. Maybe after my lifetime. Can you elaborate or bust the myth a little bit that, you know, no, there are real use case here, that you have seen yourself, or maybe Windward has worked on, you know, that really help people achieve a better regulatory outcome, you know, at the end of the day, using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, sure. So I think solving world peace sounds like it's going to need a bit more creativity than AI might be able to provide. But I'd say that, you know, the first thing I'd say is, you know, AI is not new. I mean, it's older than me. It's at least 65 years old. So it's evolved a lot, but it's always had that mystique. You know, the potential that it has to, you know, replace humans and make us irrelevant. But I think the reality is a lot different. You know, I think it's always been miscast from the start, because machines are not intelligent or creative or even sentient, right? So the things that basically they're all the things I think that makes us as humans so amazing. So I'm excited by the developments. You know, there's areas like quantum computing, but in essence they still deliver the results with algorithms, and the difference is it's just dramatically faster. So there'll always be hype, but I think what I've seen is that the reality has grown to sort of fit the hype in some of these areas, which I think is hugely exciting. I think the only creativity that really appears in AI is the programmer when she wrote the algos in the first place. I think that's the main source. Having said that, I think it gives us a fantastic toolkit. You know, when we're looking at specific problems where you've got the requirement for pattern analysis at scale, and you know, the need to provide decision support. I think that's really where we play. I think things like from, you know, machine learning to deep learning, the tools that are available to our teams are just getting better and faster. And just as an example, last year we switched on a deep learning algorithm to solve one really hard problem, which was around ship-to-ship transfer of cargo. And it happens thousands of times a day, and it's almost all innocent. But it's the 3% of the time when it isn't that you want to flag. And you can't do that with a standard list matching approach. You know, is this thing on a list, yes or no? And interestingly with that, I think we highlighted something like 400 ships, which immediately changed their risk profile. So imagine if you're a bank or an FI, the ability to actually see that change instantaneously is fantastic, because you're exposed to that risk. So I think for us, the key thing is, and you know, for regulators as well, it's still explainable. So we describe this as a glass box rather than a black box as an approach.
Yeah, but that's definitely interesting, because there's always this, again, it may not be a misconception, you know, the darker the box or the more opaque it is, the better people think it may be, but it's actually not right, because you need to be able to expose what's contained within the box and explain it, because otherwise you can't send the black box to jail if something goes wrong. You need to be able to take responsibility for pressing the button for the algorithm to actually do what is programmed to do. Now, just moving on a little bit deeper, because earlier on you mentioned, Ron, about KYV. You know, I just want to make sure that people understand that terminology, because we're familiar with KYC. You know your customer, know your business, know your you know, whatever, you know, it's always a KY at the front. So KYV refers to know your vessels. I'm assuming that's in your line of business. And I understand that you guys actually looked at or spent a bit of time, and maybe you can explain a little bit around the concept of behavioral algorithm and how that actually come about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take the first point. So on KYV, so when we think about the vessel itself, obviously there's a lot to it. So there's the ship, there's, you know, the history of what it's done over the last few years. And all of that stuff is pretty straightforward. Where it starts to get more tricky is, and this kind of leads on to the behavioral piece, is how do you build context around what you're looking at? So what's the ground truth of that data? What are you looking at really? And it's something maybe we'll talk about later on in more detail. But I think what's interesting to me is how do you build a story almost instantaneously around who owns the ship, who operates it, where's it been, who are they linked to, which entities are connected with each other. Not just the ones that basically say that they're connected, but the ones that are really, in the background connected, so that you can start to reveal, new patterns of behavior, link that through to ownership structures, and then punch out beyond maritime and into corporate structures with ultimate beneficial ownership. So that's what we say when we talk about KYV. That's really what we're saying.
Yeah, which means that at the end of it all, someone will be able to see, the complete map of relationships, not just the ships, the cargoes, the entity, the people behind the entity, or the flag that the ship bears. That all that sort of stuff is going to be out there in the glass box. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
quite cool. That you've halfway solving world peace already for compliance officers.
We're trying.
So I mean, I think well, we've coming to the end of the conversation. Actually, we're left to about like a minute or two. So I think hearing from you, I think there's lots of stuff that you guys have done, and I think out there, a lot of RegTech providers are doing some great stuff, cool stuff, and it's almost incumbent to say that at this point, it is probably using AI to manage risk is probably not a good to have. It's probably a must have, because risk gets more complicated, than ever. And therefore, using human to do it at the moment is probably not going to cut it, or, will underperform massively, and probably give rise to risk. So how would you, for the next like maybe 30 seconds, gaze into the crystal ball a little bit, and if we have this same conversation in 5 years' time, what do you think the landscape will be like using AI to manage risk?
I'll try and do this in 30 seconds, but I think data science is
Mona is counting down.
Okay, so data science is key to decision support, but it's no longer a maths discipline alone. I think about it as it takes a village to solve these global trade problems. But I think the real breakthroughs come with technology when you bring together domain expertise, behavioral scientists, as well as data scientists. We think about it as vertical AI. And just really quick, a few years ago, there was only 6 years ago, there was 15,000 data scientists worldwide. Now there's about 2.7 million. But there's 2.8 million jobs available for data scientists. So we've got 100,000 people gap, which we need to bridge in order to solve these huge issues. So I think there's an old quote that I like: we can't predict the future, but we can invent it. So
and we have to be part of the journey into the future. All right, with that, I would like to thank Ron Crean from Windward to do this fireside chat with us. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and attention, everyone. Back to you, Mona.
Thanks, Chye Kit.
Great session, guys. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much. I learned something again, KY vessel, which I didn't really think about. I mean, of course, it's logical, but you can have a KYC for everything. And a couple of similarities about, how narrow AI still is, but what the potential is. But also, with in a lot of areas, it will definitely already help to reduce at least some kind of manual work with what was not great being done by human beings anyway. So I think it really resembles the rest of the day as well. Again, Chye Kit, thank you very much for moderating and your time, because I know you are very busy today too. And hopefully you stay a little bit longer. We have one more session to go. Try to mingle, go to the lounge area, and And I speak to you guys later, hopefully ever in person again. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.